Do you think that it's weird that I have the take that the insurrection would be justified if the claims were true? No, I think that the insurrection would be totally justified if the claims were true. It's just that the claims were not true, obviously, and the insurrection was also ridiculously sloppy. Like, there was no discernible goal, no real movement, no real momentum. It was just like the most perfect American politics moment, dude. It was like they had a Disneyland version of the
What happened to you?
I got maced.
You got maced?
By the police.
And what happened? You were trying to go inside the
Yeah,
Capitol?
I made it like a foot inside and they pushed me out and they maced me.
What's your name? Where are you from?
My name is Elizabeth. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee.
And why did you want to go in?
We're storming the Capitol. It's a revolution.
Yeah. What a classic. I mean, that's definitely the attitude that a lot of these idiots had. You know what I mean? Imagine if the Occupy movement only showed up for one day and one day only, low energy conservatives. Yeah. There was a grassroots mobilization component to this entire thing, but there was also a tremendous amount of astroturfing, which is precisely why you never see that same energy, same momentum whatsoever recreated in any of the Trump events now. Why? Because Turning Point USA isn't busing people from different parts of the country anymore. Why? Well, because, like I said, they're not personally sending in people. And when you don't do that, when you don't pay for people's travel, when you don't astroturf it, you're not going to be able to get that many people out in the streets. In the same way that like real activism, real grassroots activism in the form of like, you know, protesting against police brutality during the George Floyd protests, like that kind of stuff is real. It's always hilarious to me, however, when conservatives project again, like they always do, and say things like, oh, George Soros is paying for people to go out and protest. And it's like, that's not real. You're personally projecting, because that's how it works with conservative movements. There isn't enough mobilization in and of itself on an issue, because why would there be? Who is going to mobilize on? There isn't enough passion on tax cuts or tort reform or deregulation so that, you know, DuPont Chemical can keep dumping toxic pollutants into your water supply. Those are the things that conservatives actually care about, but you're not going to be able to mobilize on that issue. So you have to find other issues, like social issues, that you can try and mobilize around. But the problem is conservative social issues bring out the sweatiest, worse losers. Like, we got our own freaks too. We got our most passionate freaks out there on the left. And yeah, sure, those guys are a little crusty, but ultimately real progressive momentum and progressive mobilization is done on actual tangible harm being done to an entire population, like police brutality. Police brutality brings out a lot of people. Why? Because there's very real people who are impacted by it, and it's a real issue. It's a real cause that you can mobilize on. That is precisely the reason why there is real grassroots mobilization happening on a lot of progressive issues, and there isn't necessarily a lot of grassroots happening on conservative issues unless you're talking about like Planned Parenthood and the like. But even then, there's a tremendous amount of big money pushing the mobilization on that front too. On abortion, on issues such as that, there's a lot of moneyed interest. But yeah, that's why I love and I'm fascinated by January 6th, because it's so incredibly American. It's so perfectly American. It's such a perfect American fuck up in every sense of the word. No real mobilization occurring on boundaries that are just so silly overall. Objective failure. What happens when you bring together the worst small business tyrants from all around the country? What is really funny about this is also that, like, the FBI never gave up on it. The FBI never gave up on, like, punishing the January 6th insurrectionists. Like, they still to this day have, I think, 80 people that are persons of interest that they have yet to prosecute. And they've still prosecuted, like, hundreds. 3 people today were finally prosecuted and arrested. It's awesome. And what ended up happening was, originally everybody distanced themselves from it, and 3 years out from the issue, 3 years out from the madness, we have now officially turned around on it completely. If you look at polling, right as it happened, a lot of Republicans were like, this is unacceptable. Like Mitch McConnell came out and was like, we need to put an end to this madness right now. And then the liberals were like, oh my God, a voice of wisdom. Like, you're so sick, Mitch McConnell. Let's forget that, like, you played a significant role in putting these crazies in positions of power because you just, you wanted to do all the deregulation you wanted to get away with. This is still the all-time greatest January 6th post. Imagine spending the better part of the last 5 years having your brain and ego melted by uninterrupted /poll exposure, flying to Washington in the middle of a pandemic to hear Trump whine about Oprah and Mike Pence at a rally, marching up to Congress on his orders to smash and then mill around aimlessly. You go home and hear that Biden won anyway. All of your favorite Twitter news sources named like Patriot Newsman of the West with avatars of Roman statues have posted your photo online and are labeling you a gay communist Antifa actor. Then the next day, the God Emperor you pasted into Warhammer memes puts out a video cucking himself and bending the knee. I'm sorry, those were heinous acts, but please let me tweet again, Jack. You can't leave DC because the airlines have dubbed you a flight risk. You can't stay because the cops are actively looking for you after one of their own died. Your roommate at the only hotel that would accept you is a guy named Base Kekistani 1488 who wants to show you his Goblin Slayer torrents. The sun is going down and you're getting cold. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it is. It's totally awesome. And it was wonderful. And yet, the hilarious part about this is that Trump very clearly demonstrated that he did not care about these people whatsoever, and like has only now, once years have gone by, basically, he's only now going back on it and being like, well, they're political prisoners and we must free them. So it's such a classic political opportunist moment. Like, he is just a pawn thing. Also, here's another great one. Seattle PD fires husband-wife duo who were at the Capitol on January 6th. This was another great one. January 6th rioter nabbed in Bumble dating app. Sting pleads guilty to assaulting officers. There's HasanAbi heads who outed their dad. That's like, this is a real thing. That's a real, yeah. HasanAbi heads that snitched on their own parents. Andrew Taake was turned in by a Bumble user who used a dating app to elicit confessions from Donald Trump supporters who took part in a Capitol attack. He gave like $10,000 raised not from his own money to legal aid. Oh, that's the other thing. He only gave 10 grand to legal aid. $10,000 only. Dude, I have given so much more to like random GoFundMes than Donald Trump has given to his own political movement. It's so awesome. It's not even his own money, I don't think. 10 grand from like campaign funds, I think, maybe. Not even his own personal funds.
Federal judge has sentenced a January 6th rioter. Joining us now is Guy Reffitt's son, Jackson Reffitt.
He's literally wearing my merch in this. He's got the Hideo Kojima Metal Gear Solid poster and wearing the HasanAbi merch. The HasanAbi Bernie merch.
I'm not happy at all, and I haven't been happy through this whole situation. No one in my family has either. But to say I'm surprised would be a lie. I mean,
I wonder if he's still a fan or if he's like one of the Fallen fans that is so H3H3 coded that we have just like Fallen fans as well.
I'm telling you, if they put the genius into running our country,
oh God,
it would be.
He looks like
probably wouldn't be running. I'd say the country's a fine-tuned machine, but they don't. They're evil.
Oh
they're basically
God,
evil people.
Bro, he looks so burnt.
Us, breaking every rule and shattering every norm in a lawless attempt to keep us from defeating them at the ballot box. They can't beat us with the vote. They know that. They didn't beat us the last time with the vote. You get the highest number in history, and
it's still
you lose.
Stolen, baby.
Where is John McLaughlin? Is he here? I wonder what my parents would say as they looked down. I said, my kid was indicted 4 times. I wonder if anybody in the country's ever been indicted that many times. I don't think so. I've been. How many times you get indicted once or twice if you kill people, but then you get put in jail, so you don't get indicted after that, right? Of course, in this country, you don't get put in jail. If you're a certain person, you don't even get in trouble if you kill people.
I don't know what he's trying to say.
They put you in jail. Look at what's happened with the J6 hostages. The hostages, that's a horrible thing. And yet Antifa knocks down Portland, destroys Portland. If I didn't put soldiers into Minneapolis, you wouldn't have that city left. Remember the CNN reporter standing there saying, this is a friendly protest. And behind him, the entire city is burning. It's as long, the entire city is burning down. Never forget, our enemies want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom. That's what's happening. They want to silence me because I will never let them silence you. And in the end, they're not after me. They're after you. I just happen to be standing in their way. That's true, actually.
Ooh, he did it.
But this
Yo,
is
that's
far
my
more
man.
than a campaign. This is the greatest political movement in the history of our country. Maybe in the history of the world, but let's just take our country. That's okay. Together
This coward,
NAFTA
he
disaster
left.
where
He
you were
left the
getting
people
ripped off,
behind,
and
brother.
especially the
He left
farmers
his
in
patriots
Iowa.
behind.
That was a
Patriots
horrible thing.
Patriots
You know why I
rose
know
up for
that
him,
USMCA is
and
so
he
good?
left
Because
them
they're trying-
behind.
Canada
Never
and Mexico are
forgive.
trying
Never
desperately
forget,
to
brother. I know
renegotiate
we
the
all
deal,
love
so
him.
Don't do it. They shouldn't do
But
it.
the reality
But it's the
is, he
best
did
trade
do us
deal they
harm.
see.
He didn't pardon none of the
Bobby,
political
he was a
prisoners.
great man. He was assassinated, but he was great. He was such a
pardoned
great guy,
random
such a
rich
great leader.
people.
They loved him in Japan. These stores in New York, love to go. I used to love to go to them. You did like drugstores and grocery stores. Everything's now got glass on top. You want to buy aspirin, and you have to call a clerk, which takes you an hour. They come over, they open it, they open a door, and they give you and then they close it, because if they leave the shelves
So
open,
good.
the place will be raided. I mean, would anybody even think that's possible? We have to bring back law and order in our country.
How do people listen to this and think Biden is incoherent? Because Biden can't go off the cuff like this. What do you mean?
Better than they've ever been. We'll
This
work
is
with the
top dome.
Democrats. We'll work
He's
with the
spitting top
Democrats
dome.
'cause
He
they
has
run
like
those
a
cities, and the cities
teleprompter,
are
but he's like
terrible. What's
freestyling
going
on top
Look
of
at the
that.
crime rate.
The problem
It's,
is, I've said this already, Donald Trump is delusional, but he's not delirious. Donald Trump is delusional. Biden is delirious. That's the difference. Donald Trump has been delusional from the jump. He's never been normal. His commentary has always been insane. Biden, on the other hand, is supposed to be the sane voice, because like when you listen to the Biden, when he can get his message out, yeah, it's a normal message. It's a good message. Even does he follow through on it? Well, that's besides the point. But if we're just simply looking at the optics of the situation, Donald Trump is insane but coherent. Biden is incoherent but sane. And unfortunately, when you are less coherent than the other party, ultimately, they're looking at it and they're thinking you're not fit enough. And there's this narrative now where people are just like, where is this coming from? That people say Biden is like demented. Biden is demented. It's like, I wonder where this narrative is coming from. And it's like, bro, from our eyes and ears and brains that we see. I'm sorry, this guy is insane, but he's very charismatic to an audience of equally insane people. People hear what he has to say and go, I like that. I'm so glad he's talking about the things that matter to me. Plastic windows that stop roving gangs of thugs from stealing laundry detergent at CVS. And I'm in Iowa, in a town with 15,000 people. And of course, I never see that, but I see it on television. There's no black people in my vicinity, but I'm scared of black people, and I see it on television, and I'm afraid of what's going on, because in my mind, in big cities, like, that's what's happening. Black people are getting together, and they're creating gangs to specifically steal laundry detergent from the CVS. That's the way these guys operate. They think that that is a real thing that's going on, and Donald Trump does a very good job of like effectively communicating that to his audience.
And the women that fight are very tough too. They fight against each other, but boy, that will be a terrible thing. But that's what they're fighting. They want them to fight. Look at the weightlifting. The weightlifting came out. The record's like 150 pounds more. I do it.
Trump is insane and incoherent. Biden is sane depending on policies, and sometimes sounds old, but I don't think he's incoherent for the most part. No, I think Biden is definitely.
But not presidential.
No, this is a big fissure in this community between like liberals and myself, like more lib adjacent community members of myself. Like, it's crazy that like I'm not gonna sit here and act like what Donald Trump is saying is like good, okay, reasonable, or even sane. But on the dementia Olympics, if we're looking at Brandon versus Trump, yeah, Donald Trump comes across as more coherent. Donald Trump also has been doing nonstop campaign stops again. If you want to compare Biden's current energy to where he used to be, look at how well of a retail politician Biden used to be.
She suffered a terrible tragedy. She was very badly injured, right? Because he went by her so fast that she got tremendous wind burn,
Left
He's
and right,
going by
then
her
left
at a
and
level.
right.
No,
What?
the whole thing, and he broke the record by many seconds. This is a thing that stood like 1/100th of a second, and they break it by like 19 seconds. The whole thing. Can you imagine that you have to say you're going to keep men out of women's sports. Who would think that that's even possible to say? It's just crazy. And these radical left lunatics are really into it. They really think it's like a good thing. I don't get it. He was a big
like
football.
the normal person in this situation, like a relatively more charismatic individual, should look at this and go, do you think this is actually harmful to the country? Republicans want you to be mad at this because they have nothing else going on. Republican politicians steal money directly out of your pockets and give it back to those mega corporations that take away, that don't pay their fair share and take advantage of you and don't pay you fairly. And the only way that the Republican Party can keep defending those guys is if they make you feel angry about some random trans girl that was at a swim meet 3 years ago. Who cares about this stuff? Let's not be ridiculous. That's the greatest way to counter this narrative, because that is the normie narrative. Normal people do not spend this much time thinking about like one trans girl in Arkansas. And even Trump knows that. But the difference is Trump also knows that his audience is getting smaller and smaller, I guess, of his like diehard supporters. So ultimately he has to cater to that base as best as possible, because that base is going to carry him across the finish line in the primaries. Oh, the thing I was going to say is mental clarity and mental acuity is demonstrated not through age at this point, but through the way you talk. What I mean by that is you look at Donald Trump and you look at Bernie Sanders and you look at Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders is the oldest guy in the bunch. Bernie Sanders also has the most energy and the most mental clarity out of the three. I mean, I'm upset at him on the Israel stuff, but like ultimately, when you have all three of them side by side, if they are having a conversation, it's Bernie number 1, Trump number 2, Joe Biden number 3 on their performance overall. So it's not necessarily just about age either. As a matter of fact, it's barely about age in this circumstance. It's more so something that you watch on this beautiful, glorious America Day. We continue our celebration, folks. Here is Donald Trump talking about magnets.
That didn't work. They had an almost $1 billion cost overrun on the magnetic elevators. Think of it, magnets. Now, all I know about magnets is this. Give me a glass of water. Let me drop it on the magnets. That's the end of the magnets. Why didn't they use John Deere? Why didn't they bring in the John Deere people? Do you like John Deere? I like John Deere. They had an almost $1 billion cost overrun on the magnetic elevators. Think of it, magnets. Now, all I know about magnets is this. Give me a glass of water. Let me drop it on the magnets. That's the end of the magnets.
That's it. It's over. He's right. Magnets, how do they work? You drop water on them, it breaks. Like, that Trump magnet situation is a perfect distillation of all of the things I say about his commentary. It doesn't make any sense. It's incorrect information, but it's still delivered in like a funny way. And his audience is also stupid as hell, and they think it's funny and great. At a certain point, I think it comes down to fifis. It always comes down to fifis. And people like Trump, they think he's charismatic. They think he's rizzed up. People don't feel the same way about Joe Biden. And a big part of that is because he, unfortunately, it's something that he can't really change about himself. And it's just that he is not exactly all there in the same way that he used to be. Joe Biden of 10 years ago clears Trump so unimaginably hard, right? He does.